it wasn't just a jab on Arteta, was it? It was a full haymaker. That second half performance was absolutely terrific.
Maybe they were underestimated slightly, Manchester City, which sounds ridiculous.
A reminder from Pep Guardiola, actually, I'm not a bad manager, you know, I still know how to win trophies. But from Arteta's perspective, he looked lost in that second half. It was pretty clear. First 10 minutes after half-time, City dominating possession. They had to be proactive then and make changes.
They were shell-shocked, I thought, certainly after that first goal. Arsenal had never really recovered.
It's not so much about City from here, it is about how Arsenal react. They got bullied themselves in that second half, and I think psychologically they need to bounce straight back.
For me, there was a few big red flags that came out of this game. One, the team selection. Two, the reaction to the first goal. And three, the fact that Arsenal could not find a way to create chances in a game of huge magnitude.
But when it comes to this particular final, Kepa has had a nightmare record. Refused to come off in one final, missed a penalty in another, and actually he could easily have been sent off even before he made the mistakes. I think team selection was wrong.
I think you have to be ruthless in scenarios like this. You know, David Raya is one of the best goalkeepers in the world, arguably one of the players of the season. To leave him on the bench in a cup final that you need to win, you haven't won since 1993, you haven't won a trophy since 2020. Mistake for me. It's Premier League All Access with me, Sam Matterface. Dashboard Dean Ashton has decided to prove to everyone that even when you're in witness protection, you are allowed to do a bit of painting because in his background today, instead of just like a blank wall, so that he is in an anonymous location so no one can find him, he's got little houses. Did you paint that yourself?
I didn't. No, I've been too busy for that, of course.
Right, okay.
But yeah, I thought it would probably be better to have a bit of colour to try and shake this nickname that seems to be following me around.
It's quite funny, isn't it? Now that we've started to get a response from some of our talkSPORT colleagues who just keep coming on and say, "Oh, it's Dashboard." It's great. I quite like that. I like the fact that Dashboard Dean Ashton has stuck after, you know, listen, if you're going to do podcasts in the front of a car, then you are going to get stick for that. Alex Crook is here. How are you? Look, in resplendent form, by the way. If you are listening to this podcast, I'll tell you that the background of Crook's picture today is a beautiful blue sky, sun peering through a lattice terrace, which is behind. And he said to me before we came on, is the sound all right? Or is the sea too loud?
Tell you what, much needed little bits of pre-World Cup international break sunshine. I'm over in sunny Portugal and it's absolutely glorious.
I think all of our listeners would have had a bet on you being in Portugal, mate, to be honest with you. They know that it's your second home. Wembley was the second home of Manchester City for a very long time. And the League Cup final in particular was almost a preserve of Pep Guardiola. He's had a couple of years without it, but he is back with a vengeance. I think Crook and I were both at this game on Sunday, and I'm sure that you kept close tabs on it, Dean. It wasn't just a jab on Arteta, was it? It was a full haymaker. That second half performance was absolutely terrific.
Yes, it was. It just felt as if towards half-time, City had got a grip really of the game and possession and control, and that just continued into the second half. And I think maybe they were underestimated slightly, Manchester City, which sounds ridiculous, but I just think it's one of their best performances, certainly second half. And I thought, in particular, Semenyo was quite key to, I think, causing a lot of problems. In Kepa, for the first time, certainly in his Arsenal career, I looked and thought, wow, you know, he's really struggled against Semenyo. And then what that did is it opened a lot of space on the other side for Nico O'Reilly to be the star.
And he certainly was. And we'll talk about the impact of what that result will have on the rest of the season very shortly. Just a quick word on Spurs, who have had another terrible afternoon at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. It's quite frightening, really. They haven't won any of their last 13 league matches. They are without a win in 2026 domestically. They've won just 30 points from 31 games this season, which, accounting for 3 points for a win, is their joint lowest return after 31 games since 1914-15. And I'm pretty sure that the season was curtailed halfway through that for the First World War. Crook, Igor Tudor came in going to war with his player as a playing squad. Is he going to go out with a bang as well?
Well, it's a long time, isn't it, until Tottenham play again. You've got the international break, then you've got the FA Cup weekend. So it does feel like now or never in terms of Igor Tudor. If they're going to stick with the Croatian and hope he can find some form, or they're going to hire their third manager of the season. He's got obviously a tragic personal situation that he had to go and deal with after the game, losing his father. So our thoughts go out to him. But yeah, I'd be surprised if Tudor is still in charge for the next Premier League game, because they have to roll the dice, Spurs, don't they? It's an appointment that hasn't worked out. I didn't see this result coming after Liverpool away at Atletico Madrid. I thought they had turned a bit of a corner, but that's a horror show against a Forest side who never score any goals, to concede 3 at home. And you look at the defending. I saw Christian Romero came out and spoke to club television after the game and said, in tough times we had to stick together. You could try and run, mate. Don't jog back when Forest are on the attack for the second goal. Absolutely appalling from him again. And the only way they stay up now is if West Ham or one of the other teams keep them up, because I don't see where the points are coming from for Spurs. I looked at their run of games. There's not too many you're going to back them to win.
Yeah, our best wishes to Igor Tudor. I didn't actually know that it was his father who passed away, actually, and that must be a very difficult thing for him to deal with in the aftermath of what was a chastening result. You're absolutely right about Romero. I think I texted you about this really late on Sunday night. I'd come back from the cup final, put on Match of the Day, and I was watching that second and third goal. And what annoyed me about it more than anything else was that he'd gone and done that ego move again, where he'd gone out to try and win the ball that he was never going to win, and then didn't bother running back to fill in the box. Now, no one covered for him, so he wasn't the only one that was guilty. There was a few of them that were guilty. I mean, Papsar missing a header and then failing to close down and stop the cross coming in, which was wonderful, by the way, from Nico Williams. I mean, but it was just too much of that, again, from Tottenham. Fight for 44 minutes, all of a sudden concede, and then find themselves in a situation where they just collapse again, which is a massive, massive problem. And I make you right. The only way they're going to stay up if somebody else is worse than them. We've got a lot to say on Liverpool, and we've got a lot to say on Chelsea, who had another bad day at the office as well. And Sunderland goes 6 out of 6 against Newcastle United, which was a massive win for them. So, should we get into it? Let's start with the cup final. Manchester City 2, Arsenal 0. Nico O'Reilly, fantastic performance from him. I was at the end where those 2 goals were scored, and I tell you what, that end had all the action, didn't it? Because in a turgid first half, James Trafford with a triple save, and then in the second half, absolute City battering. What happened, and why did Pep Guardiola manage to get the better of Mikel Arteta tactically yesterday, Dean?
I think, he's... I don't think necessarily it was a huge amount of tactics, because you know what City are going to do. You know that they're going to keep possession and wait for those opportunities and let certain players drift into positions as they build up the play. You can see it, especially from that higher view. I think you can really see how City play, and certain players, whether it's Núñez, whether it's O'Reilly, the 2 sort of number 10s, Bernardo, they're then allowed to kind of drift off. And if you allow that to happen, and I just couldn't believe how passive Arsenal were to allow them to keep as much possession as they did. Eventually, City will find the gaps. They will. They've got the players. Semenyo has got the beating of individuals on his own, and then you add to that a couple of mistakes. Kepa with a terrible mistake for the first goal. Saka for me on the second goal, by the way, because he's with O'Reilly. O'Reilly does it. You must have done the analysis on what he does and how he arrives into the box, as he did for the first goal. You're the captain, and you've let O'Reilly just run past you into the penalty area and head it into the back of the net for 2-0. But they're the details at the highest level in cup finals that make the difference. And I think they were shell shocked. I thought, certainly after that first goal, Arsenal, and never really recovered.
Yeah, and that's, I suppose, where we have to start, Crook, isn't it? Because it's how you react to that. Because for me, there was a few big red flags that came out of this game. One, the team selection. Two, the reaction to the first goal. And three, the fact that Arsenal could not find a way to create chances in a game of huge magnitude.
Yeah, and actually, I had a fascinating vantage point. I was sat behind the Arsenal dugout. First half, I thought Arsenal were comfortably the better team. Didn't create loads of chances, but dominated possession. And you mentioned the triple save from Trafford already. Pep Guardiola was very animated. There were a lot of heated conversations between him and Pep Linders in particular, and Kolo Touré to a certain extent as well. Second half, after the goal, was completely different. I actually thought Pep was trying to hurdle the advertising hoardings when they scored. Then he realised they were quite big, and he ended up kicking it instead. And obviously, he was off doing a Mourinho down the touchline with the second goal. So I think that tells you how significant he feels this could be. He's obviously won bigger prizes in his career, but obviously just that's one of his sweeter successes in a cup final, because everybody was writing Manchester City off. Arsenal heavy favourites with the bookmakers. I think we all predicted an Arsenal victory, and it was just a reminder from Pep Guardiola. Actually, I'm not a bad manager, you know. I still know how to win trophies. But from Arteta's perspective, and I said it on air when they threw to me after the second goal, he looked lost in that second half. It was pretty clear. First 10 minutes after half-time, City dominating possession. They had to be proactive then and make changes. Arsenal, I agree with Dean. I felt Nketiah struggled all afternoon. Havertz didn't make any kind of impact in the number 10 position. So I personally think Arteta should have been more proactive with the changes and tried to wrestle back control before the mistake from Kepa, who clearly shouldn't have been picked. If you've not won a trophy since 2020, as Arsenal haven't, you pick your best goalkeeper in a cup final. Loyalty and sentiment has to go out the window. That's before you even factor in that when it comes to this particular final, Kepa has had a nightmare record. Refused to come off in one final, missed a penalty in another, and actually he could easily have been sent off even before he made the mistakes. I think team selection was wrong, but he ran out of ideas very quickly, Mikel Arteta, and so did Arsenal. And Darren Bent said in commentary, they need to be braver here. They need to release the handbrake. They don't know how to, because they're so trained to one way of playing. So even when they're 2-0 down, they have to go chasing it. They don't know how to adjust from that sort of pragmatic defensive mode. And that's ultimately what cost them.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting when you spoke to Mikel Arteta after the game about him standing there and watching City lift the cup and collect their medals. And he said, well, that's just a respect thing. But your point to him was, look, are you going to use this as fuel for the rest of the season? And that's the key thing that I think many Gunners fans are a little bit concerned about now, because everything that they feared came true in this final. Everything that worried them about this team reared its head during that 90 minutes. Dominating possession, not scoring the goals, switching off, conceding twice, mistakes, lapses in concentration, a mental fragility, and not getting over the line. Now, you can have a go at them and you can point to them and say, you know, that they're bottle jobs if you want. I mean, that's just a really easy narrative to sort of come up and go for. But Manchester City are a very good team who know how to win and who are bred to win. But what happens next is key, Dean, isn't it? How they react to it. What happens when they come back from the international break? How they tackle that game at the Etihad Stadium in the middle of April, which Crook and I will be at. That is the big thing that Mikel Arteta now has got to negotiate.
Yeah, he has. And I heard Declan Rice after the game as well talking about that one final isn't going to define them and they have got other opportunities. And I think they have done quite well most of the season to respond when there has been that genuine threat to their season, certainly their Premier League season. I think they've responded because of the way they play against most sides in the Premier League is going to be good enough to win the game and not concede. And look, I think I can't quite remember the minute that City had their first touch in Arsenal's penalty area. I think it was something like the 26th minute that Manchester City, had their first touch in the. Because that's what Arsenal do. They tend to give you absolutely nothing. And I think, they're going to have to respond. It'll be a big blow to them. The only thing I would say is they were missing their two most creative players in the forward areas, in Odegaard and Eze. You know, those two players are such a huge miss. You know, if you were to take out a Rodri and Bernardo Silva, for example, out of City side, I know they were missing centre-backs, of course they were, but those were two big players for Arsenal to miss out on in that final in particular. And I know we've been talking about the strength of the squad, but you could really see they missed those two players.
I actually thought the biggest misses were Urian Timber and Calafiori, two players who not only are brilliant defensively, but add a dimension going forward that Nkapie and Ben White don't. Ben White, very good at going on the overlap on the outside, whereas Timber is very good at going on that inside right channel and adding an extra number to the attacking battalion. It just gives something a little bit different for defences to think about. You're absolutely right about Manchester City. When that team sheet came out, both Crook and I, who had come into the concourse to see us, said, like, there's absolutely no chance they're going to be able to deal with Arsenal's physicality at set pieces, for example. But actually, the set pieces were poor. There was the first corner of the game, Bukayo Saka took it from the near touchline where we were sitting, and he whipped it in, and it didn't get above the first man. And that was the tail of the tape. They didn't give them that many set pieces, but none of them were very threatening at all. I mean, some of that's down to the way that Manchester City defended, by the way, and I do think they deserve a hell of a lot of credit, actually, with the way that they managed that, because I thought Kusanov in particular was superb. And him and Ake had Gyökeres's number. I mean, Gyökeres couldn't get away from Ake, let alone get away from Kusanov, who was incredibly, incredibly fast. Obviously, for Pep Guardiola, the rumours about him leaving at the end of the season refused to go away. When you were in the tunnel in the dressing room area after the game, did you pick anything up, Crook?
Well, the only thing I did pick up is when I sort of asked him how this could impact the rest of the season. He said, you know what, I'm tired. I need a break. I'm off to Catalonia. I'm going to get some sunshine. I'm going to eat some tapas. And I wonder if that'll be the case come the end of the season as well. He's got a trophy in the cabinet now. He's not going to go out on the back of two trophyless seasons should he leave. And I think that's really significant. And who knows? They might pick up another one, be it the FA Cup or maybe try and reel Arsenal in, because all of a sudden, and I've been guilty of this and said that they're not going to catch Arsenal. They're good enough. It is only 9 points. They've got a game in hand. They've got to play Arsenal. It's not so much about City from here. It is about how Arsenal react. But looking at that second half, looking at the body language of the players, arms folded, ashen face, they watch City go up and pick up their winners' medals. It just dawned on me, all of a sudden, having looked pretty imperious and being able to bully teams for much of the season, they got bullied themselves in that second half. And I think psychologically, they need to bounce straight back. And I actually think, I was predicting the night before that their quadruple charge would be ended at Southampton in the FA Cup, because it's on the back of an international break. They've got Champions League football the midweek straight afterwards. Southampton have named strong teams throughout the competition. They weren't brilliant against Mansfield. They conceded against Portsmouth. I think that's a really difficult FA Cup tie, and even more so now, because all eyes are going to be on Arsenal to see how they respond.
Absolutely. I thought Emmanuel Petit on talkSPORT Breakfast was absolutely sensational, really hard-hitting. And he said it really infuriated him to see the body language of the players after that first goal went in. He was wound up by that. And he said Declan Rice was the only one turning around to the rest of the team and saying, come on, lads, we can still do something here. But they didn't. They didn't look like scoring. Actually, I think they hit the crossbar at last minute of the game, something like that. And that was the closest they came really to really causing problems for Manchester City. I mean, obviously, we haven't really spoken about Kepa that much because the rest of the performance wasn't really in keeping with a proper cup final. But it was a poor idea to pick him if you know Kepa's history in this competition. But at the same time, Alan Pardew was brilliant on talkSPORT explaining why managers do it, because they've got to keep these goalkeepers interested just in case you've got a problem. But I think you have to be ruthless in scenarios like this. David Raya is one of the best goalkeepers in the world, arguably one of the players of the season. To leave him on the bench in a cup final that you need to win. You haven't won since 1993. You haven't won a trophy since 2020. Mistake for me, but, I'm not the manager of Arsenal. Right, that's it for the League Cup. Should we get on to the Premier League now? Because there's a lot of questions to ask during this international break. Who will be the Spurs manager when we come back? Who's going to go down from the Premier League? And are Chelsea actually going to get a Champions League football? Or are Aston Villa going to come back from a dip and cement their place there? Shall we start at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium then? Tottenham 0, Nottingham Forest 3. Wow. I mean, what a week for Tottenham Hotspur. They've gone from picking up a point at Anfield with an okay performance to winning against Atletico Madrid and boosting their morale to getting absolutely torn apart in the second half by Nottingham Forest. Dean Ashton, I mean, the roller coaster of emotions that Tottenham put on their fans is difficult for an outside observer to handle. If you're emotionally invested in it, it must be sending your heart rate spiking.
Yeah, it's not great, is it? And I thought it was arrogance, if I'm honest. I bet there's no way that team and that manager approached the game the way they did Liverpool at Anfield. Now, people might say, well, why would you? Because you're in a relegation battle. Because you have to make yourself so hard to beat. You can't lose to Nottingham Forest. They are your rivals in a relegation battle. You can't lose that game at home. Okay, you draw it. It wouldn't have been a disaster. It would have been an extra point on the board away from West Ham. You don't lose that game. They played as if, oh, well, it's Nottingham Forest, we're at home, and we can just win the game. It's just it's the wrong mentality. It's like they've got no idea what position they're in. I think that's what's so startling is everybody probably associated with the club at the moment doesn't realise what position they're in. You're about to get relegated if you don't start picking up points. You've got to be a horrible team to play against. West Ham are trying, but failing in certain moments. Nottingham Forest is certainly being a horrible team to play. Leeds is. So, look, that's the issue. That is the biggie. Get on the phone, park your pride, phone Harry Redknapp, and get him in to escape you from relegation because they're going down. They are. The mentality, the performances, they are going down at the moment.
Well, Harry Redknapp's name was being sung around the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium towards the end of the game. I looked at this team sheet and I thought, they're not going to play like that. Come on, they're not going to play like that. They're going to play, it's going to be a back three. Spencer's going to play left wing back. Porro's going to play right wing back. They're not going to play 4-4-2 with Jed Spence at right back and Pedro Porro as a right winger and Mickey van der Ven at left back. Your best centre half is not going to play left back. That's not going to happen. Oh, it did. What on earth was that all about, Crook?
Bizarre. And he changes the formation every week. He changes the personnel game to game. And we were both there, Sam, in midweek. Outside of Archie Gray, for me, Tottenham's best player by a country mile was Xavi Simons. 2 goals, a real threat in that number 10 position, which he's not played too often in his Tottenham career. I've already mentioned to you on air and privately about the fact that when all the players went off on their jollies after Thomas Frank was sacked, they were given 5 days off. He stayed behind, he did extra training, he got involved with the youth team. He wants to succeed. Why would you leave that type of character on the bench on the back of probably his best performance in a Tottenham shirt for a game
he
you
hasn't
have to win?
fancied him the whole time that he's been there. He hasn't fancied him. He's marginalised him from the very beginning.
Yeah, but it's baffling. And like you say, Van der Ven at left back, Porro as a right winger. It was an awful, awful team selection. And they got what they deserved, which was precisely nothing, Tottenham. I don't know if the fans' parade, which I'm sure was well intended, helped before the game. I'm not sure that I want to be parading when my team are on the brink of the most embarrassing demotion in the Premier League era, but it probably added extra pressure to the players as well. But Dean's right. This is a group of players who turn up when they fancy it. They'll turn up at Anfield where you don't expect them to get anything. They'll turn up in the second half against Manchester City at 2-0 down and get a point. They'll turn up against Atletico Madrid at home when there's no pressure. But when the chips are down, they're a bunch of imposters. They've got between them, they've got a heart the size of a pea. And I'm looking at their fixtures. They might beat Wolves. They might not. They're not going to beat anyone else.
They've got Sunderland away next when they come back from the international break. And it's not just an international break, it's an FA Cup break for them. So they have 24 days or something between games, or 21 days between games. They have this match, and then the next match is on the 12th of April. At 2:00, they go away to Sunderland. And then the following match after that is a home game with Brighton. Then they go to Wolverhampton Wanderers. And then after that, they go to Aston Villa. It doesn't get any easier. I know that you can say, well, Wolves might end up being bad, go down from there. And then, but I've seen Wolves over the last couple of weeks. And I tell you what, Wolves will absolutely batter Tottenham the way they're playing at the moment, because Tottenham are too easy to play against. There's too many spaces. And Wolves pop the ball around nicely. They play out from the back. They play short, sharp passes. They've got a lot of speed. They've got a lot of players there that are trying to prove a point. Rob Edwards has done a really good job. So the idea of, like, you know, that being a given, if they don't turn up with the right attitude, Wolverhampton Wanderers will pick them off, and they will do it for fun. So they've got to be very, very, very careful, because I think I've said all along, they won't go down. They won't go down. But I can't find reasons why they won't go down anymore, because they now, there is no, the only reason is that somebody else is more rubbish than they are. They just don't, they look devoid of fight. I don't know what you do. I mean, the Harry Redknapp thing is an interesting one, because he obviously wants to go in and do it, but I don't know, will those players respond to him? I don't know who they'll respond to.
Well, if they were going to do Harry, they'd have done it by now. I don't think that's a realistic possibility.
Addy Hooter is the name I'm hearing, Crook.
Well,
is that right?
I was about to say that. That's the whisper. I mean, honestly, guys, where do you pluck these people from? Most recently fired by Monaco. Know nothing about the Premier League. Same as Igor Tudor. What on earth makes the top of the hierarchy? If they're going to make a change, they're going to bring in another untested foreign manager who has no experience in the Premier League, let alone a relegation battle. You need someone like Harry, who's been there, got the T-shirt. I still think Robbie Keane, for me, is probably the best bet, but it might be too late. How many times have a team had 3 managers in a season, or changed a manager this late, and it's actually worked out? I think the damage is done. It's
not too late, is it, Dean? Because you've got time to get points on the board. You just need to do it now, right now.
Yes, and you have got those big games. You will have to play Leeds as well, and you know, I think that's why I think you need someone like Harry. Harry is unique, by the way. You know, that he has got a unique character. He has been in football a long time. He does know the game. So anyone that thinks he just had a jolly in the jungle and likes his baking, no, this is a guy who knows football. He really knows football, and he knows players. And I think what Crook said really interesting in terms of having that player like Simmons that's been pulled out of the side. Harry would build a team around him. That's the difference. That's the difference with someone like Harry Redknapp. And I hate the fact that some people think it would be like a joke appointment, as if he's too old and that he's had his time. No, this is a guy that, and he would be serious. He'd be serious about what he's got to do there. And I just think they need to part the pride and bring him in right away, personally.
Obviously, we've all had dealings with him. We've all worked with him very closely. And I think he's now got a very different image to the Harry that had the last experience at Queen's Park Rangers. And I think he was at Leicester for a while, just sort of helping out, wasn't he? I think he had a sort of, it didn't work very well towards the end at Queen's Park Rangers, that is for sure. But if you know him and you know how he operates, you know that he is probably one of the best at getting the best out of people. Now, he also is a ruthless man. He's a very ruthless man. And if he believes that someone is causing an issue, he'll cut them out. He'll cut them out and concentrate on the ones he believes are going to get him to achieve whatever it is they need to achieve. On this occasion, it's staying in the Premier League. And I think I've experienced his ruthless tongue and how harsh he can be. I know Crook definitely has, because I've witnessed it. I don't know about you, Dean, but he also has the propensity to absolutely humiliate you and kill you, and then the next minute be your best mate and build you up and feel like, you know, you can do anything with him, because he is a man manager, and that's what this team need. They need someone who can build them up and get them to express themselves, because when they play like they did on Tuesday night or Wednesday night against Atletico Madrid, they look like a team. When they play like they did yesterday, they don't.
They need a new captain. I don't want to look like I'm picking on him, but Romero's a disgrace. Honestly, absolute disgrace. He's not a leader of men at all, but he's certainly not leading this team.
He's also getting them in trouble with his defensive ego. I keep saying it. You know, stop going out into midfield and trying to do somebody else's job. Do your job and concentrate on make sure you're defending the box. You keep wandering out there and leaving a gap behind you, you're going to concede more goals. It happened twice yesterday. For God's sakes, learn. Let's talk about West Ham United. A long overdue win for Villa. And they're in the top 4 race, and not only in the top 4 race, but they're almost sort of cementing themselves in there, aren't they? They're 5 points clear of Liverpool and 6 points clear of Chelsea. At this stage of the season, that's a fantastic place to be, Dean.
Yes, it is. And look, I think West Ham was slightly unfortunate that, John McGinn was back, Tielemans was back on the bench, and it was Aston Villa's best, certainly half of football that they played, I think, at Villa Park this season in the Premier League. They've been quite underwhelming in quite a few of the games that I've actually done there for talkSPORT. And West Ham were on the end of what was a great performance from Villa, and West Ham not quite at the levels that they've reached recently. And that's what was really disappointing from Nuno's perspective when he talked about it after the game, that we weren't ever there. We weren't at the levels needed, whereas Aston Villa were back to the levels that they've set under Emery. And with those players back, you can see what a difference it makes. You can see all of a sudden Rodgers coming to life and Watkins coming to life when you've got McGinn driving from midfield. So it was a really good performance from Villa, and taking advantage when the others slip up. It's big at this stage of the season. It really is.
West Ham they've got the FA Cup quarter-final against Leeds United as their next game at the London Stadium. Then they welcome Wolverhampton Wanderers on a Friday night. Both those two games are live on talkSPORT, by the way. And then Crystal Palace against West Ham after that. Another one which is live on talkSPORT. I mean, those next 3 games may well define the season. This cup competition now, it's amazing, isn't it, that West Ham and Leeds are playing each other not only in the cup but also on the final weekend of the season, Crook. I mean, it's a little bit like their destinies are going to be entwined, and I think at the moment, the way things are, you'd expect Leeds to get the better of them in both.
You would, although they're not winning many games, are they, Leeds? So
they're not getting beat, are they?
No, they're not. And, obviously, if you're not going to win the game, then don't lose it. But what they're not doing is putting clear daylight between them and the bottom 3. So I think we have to certainly factor them into the relegation conversation. But I watched this Villa West Ham game on the plane over to Portugal on Monday morning. They got battered, West Ham. I mean, you're right to praise Villa's performance, but it could have been an even bigger defeat and a real demoralising one in terms of momentum and goal difference as well. I think they probably met Villa at a bad time with John McGinn, as Dean's alluded to, coming back. Tielemans came on in the second half as well. So, do you know what? Having been worried about Villa in terms of the top 5, if McGinn and Tielemans can stay fit and they can build on this result, Ollie Watkins get a much-needed goal, I think they might be okay, particularly with Chelsea and Liverpool imploding. But I was alarmed by the West Ham performance. I didn't see enough fight from West Ham. And I do think it might come down as a shootout between them and Spurs. I really do.
I mentioned Leeds United and their results recently. It's 3 without a goal now. They're playing poorly at the wrong time of the season. Are they going to bore their way to safety, Dean?
Well, Daniel Farke keeps talking about a point a game that gets you to safety, and how unlucky they feel because this time last season they would have already been safe with the points that they've got. And it's quite a negative attitude in the way that he's spoken. It was a very negative performance, I felt, as well. On Saturday night, I was there and did that game. It was a difficult watch because Leeds didn't create a lot. Calvert-Lewin did not get a touch. When you think of that touch map of his goals, when he was going through that hot streak, all in the middle of the pitch between the penalty spot and the 6-yard line,
like a bus queue.
Yeah, well, there wasn't any of that supply, and all the sort of exciting pace and attacking wide talent that Leeds have got all sat there on the bench. Okafor and James. I mean, James came on for the last 10 minutes and showed more in that 10 minutes than the rest of the team in the previous 80. So I think they need to be a bit braver, because I think they've got a good enough squad, and I've seen them play well enough without actually winning the games, Leeds, but they've been dragged back in all of a sudden, and you can sense there's an edge there, and I just wonder, again, we talk about Arsenal and City in this cup final. I just wonder whether there could be a bit of an edge in that FA Cup game between West Ham and Leeds as well, leading into the rest of the season.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm going to that one. I'm looking forward to it. That's on Sunday, the 5th of April, Easter Sunday, live on talkSPORT, 4:30 kickoff. I think Leeds have got better fixtures than anybody else, though, going towards the end of the season, haven't they? I mean, they've got to pick up, 2 wins? You'd think 39 points should keep you in the division, shouldn't it? I mean, they've got Manchester United away, which is a difficult place, obviously, for them to go. They entertain Wolves at home. They go to Bournemouth, not easy. But they've got Burnley and Tottenham and West Ham. It is in their own hands. It is in their own hands, Leeds United. And if you're going to be in a situation where you're fighting at the bottom, that's what you want. You want fixtures you know that if you win, you're going to be safe. And those 3 fixtures, Burnley, Wolves, Tottenham, and the West Ham 1-4, are great fixtures to have towards the end of a season. I think that they're probably happier with their running than anybody else is. That's for sure. Okay, let's talk about some of the other big games this weekend and the European contenders. Newcastle United and Sunderland. Wow, another defeat for Newcastle. Chelsea were absolutely battered at the Hill Dickinson Stadium by an excellent Everton. And Liverpool dropping points again, this time away from home at Brighton. Do that next. Let's do Newcastle versus Sunderland quickly. Look, I mean, I don't want to skate over it because it's a massive game in the North East and it garners a lot of attention. But I think in terms of the context of the division, these two teams very much now sort of fighting possibly just to get out of the bottom half of the table, Dean. Newcastle United taking the lead, looking for all the world like the better team in the first 45 minutes. But Sunderland came out second half, as they did down at Bournemouth when I was there the other week, and they were a different outfit.
Yeah, they were. Regis Labrius again, delivering, resting players that were sort of injured and bringing them on like Lefay in the second half. But I think Newcastle, I did the game against Barcelona. It's been a bad week. And, you know, they've really missed Bruno and Tonali in this game in particular. All of a sudden, that midfield looks pretty weak. And we're overrun in the second half by Granit Xhaka and his pals. And I think, look, Eddie Howe's taken a lot of stick. I've seen on social media, Newcastle fans have sort of got onto him after this week in particular. But surely he's got a lot of credit in the bank. Surely, when you can see the players that are missing, he has to have some credit in the bank.
If Eddie Howe hasn't got credit in the bank, then no one's got credit in the bank. Eddie Howe ended a 70-year wait for a domestic trophy. If he hasn't got credit in the Newcastle bank a year on, then we're all in massive trouble here. We've completely lost our minds because obviously there are mitigating factors about this season. If you can't see that, you're not listening properly, because if you speak to David Hopkinson, who's the CEO, if you're watching them on a week-to-week basis, you can see there are signs in games where they're actually playing quite well in patches, but they don't have the squad to be able to finish the match as strong as they started it, because they've depleted because of injury, because of the lack of recruitment, because they're being hamstrung by PSR. All of those things are major factors. If you think getting rid of Eddie Howe is going to solve your problems, I'm sorry. I think you're onto a hiding to nothing.
Can I just ask Crook quickly, whether I don't know whether you know this or not, how much influence does Eddie Howe have on recruitment? Because he's playing. There's in midweek there was 3 centre forwards sat on the bench, and he played Gordon through the middle, who can do that. But then he's playing Voltemada in midfield. Visser's barely getting a look in as such. Is that him kind of saying, look, you didn't get the players I needed. You just didn't.
No, I think he had a big say this summer because they didn't have a sporting director until Ross Wilson came in, and he's always somebody who wants a big input in recruitment anyway. I think it's more of a reflection of the fact that it was just back to front Newcastle summer. I've said this before and I'll say it again. I think the owners always intended to sell Alexander Isak. I think it was a game of poker to try and drive the price as high as possible. I think they should have done a deal with Liverpool a lot earlier in the window than they did. Who knows? Maybe then Liverpool wouldn't have signed Hugo Ekitike, and he'd be a Newcastle player right now. They might have been able to get 1 or 2 more of their top targets. So I do think the fact they're struggling this season by their own recent standards is a reflection of what was a very difficult summer. And it isn't a great look on any Newcastle managers to lose not once but twice to Sunderland in the same season. I think you speak to most Newcastle fans, certainly match-going Newcastle fans, they're aware of what Eddie Howe has done for that football club. He still very much has credit in the bank with them. And all I would say to Newcastle supporters who do want a change of manager, be careful what you wish for, because look where you were when Eddie Howe came in. Look where you are now. You're frustrated at losing a Champions League game, albeit heavily, against Barcelona. You could only have dreamt of that a few years ago.
Well, that's the other thing, isn't it? I mean, they were in the last 16 of the Champions League. They got to the semi-final of the Carabao Cup. It's an incredibly disappointing situation to lose twice to Sunderland. I totally get that. I'm not making light of that. But the truth of the matter is this team are in a much better place now than they were 5 years ago when he took over. Now, I think next year they're going to obviously have to do better recruitment. They're going to have to improve the squad, no doubt about it. And hopefully, Johan Vista, for example, will have a pre-season and come back a little bit sharper than he has done this. But with the Anthony Gordon thing, we can suggest that maybe that's a little bit out there to play him as the false nine. By the way, the England under-21s did that a couple of years ago when they won the European Championships. He has scored 10 goals across all competitions for Newcastle in 2026 alone. Only Chelsea's João Pedro has netted more among Premier League players during that period. So actually, he's been pretty reliable in front of goal. And he took his goal yesterday really well, I thought, Dean. I mean, you're a striker, you tell me. But even though that comes to, and Voltemar's pass, someone said if he meant it, I think he did mean it, then he bumped it straight into Gordon. If he did mean it, it was absolutely terrific. But the way he skipped round the defender, I thought was impressive.
No, and he is, and I think he can play that role, and he might actually favour it for going forwards in his career. Anthony Gordon, I did a lot of the games for the England under-21s in that time. He was terrific because he's that willing runner that's got intelligence in his movement and the pace to get him behind. But you can bang it into his feet, and he's capable in that sense as well. I just think it is quite an admission in terms of the recruitment, in terms of going, we're having to play Gordon there because we don't trust any of the forwards we've got to certainly be better than him. And then, then you've got these players that cost you a lot of money that certainly either are on the bench or playing out of position. Now, it worked for Joe Linton. It might work for Voltemade. It's just, I don't think it's a great look, that's all, from a Newcastle perspective.
Okay, it's a great look for Sunderland, by the way, and excellent work from Regis Labrise, who's brought a team up from the Championship and they've competed in the Premier League. By the way, lads, that's how you do it when you come up from the Championship. You have to be able to compete, and certainly Sunderland are showing you the way. Brilliant recruitment, excellent manager, well done to them. In fact, Nottingham Forest and Sunderland over the course of the last few years are the only two teams really that have done that. I know Leeds have come up and they may well stay up this time, and if they do, brilliant. But Sunderland have done an excellent job. Nottingham Forest over the years have done an excellent job, and they may well stay up this time around as well. Let's round things off with a little look at bleak Saturday. Brighton 2, Liverpool 1, and Everton 3, Chelsea 0. Now, if you're a Brighton fan or an Everton fan, you probably think I'm being out of order, but I'm talking about it from a perspective of Liverpool and Chelsea. Everton were terrific. I thought they were absolutely superb. Some of the goals they scored, one of the goals they scored was excellent. The rest of them probably handed to them by a goalkeeper who isn't good enough to play for Chelsea, and for whatever reason, the owners and the sporting directors think he's the saviour. He's not. He's not a very good goalkeeper at this level. He's probably a nice bloke and he's achieved a lot. He's a good shot stopper. In certain games, he has worldies, but he is not consistent enough, and he would always make a mistake, and he's going to cost you at some point over the course of the season. The problem is he's cost Chelsea far too many times over the course of the season, and Saturday was another example. But to blame Robert Sanchez would be a dereliction of duty. This is a failing on the whole club in terms of recruitment. It's a failing on the players that have, I think, sort of switched off a little bit over the course of the last few weeks. There was the second goal when Beto scores and it squeezes through the legs of Sanchez. There are so many failings. Andre Santos gives away the ball. Cucurella doesn't make a proper tackle. No one can keep up with Beto. Fofana can't get there. It's poor all round. And then Sanchez, obviously, it squeezes through his legs. It was a terrible goal to concede. And then you look at the third goal, no pressure on the ball, Chelsea dropping off, Enzo Fernandez coming out with these wild statements about, he might go off and do this and that, and suggesting, actually in one interview, which didn't really sort of I don't think permeated the English consciousness, because it was, I think, given to an Argentinian radio station or something, where he suggested that ever since Enzo Maresco had departed, that there had been a lack of focus in training, and it wasn't the same. Well, I'm sorry, but it is your job to be focused and carry out whatever game plan is given to you. I just think it's a group that obviously is lacking leadership. It's obvious why that is the case. It's the recruitment policy, but it's become a football club that is a football club second and a business first. And whilst that is the case, and it's becoming apparent now on the pitch that you can see that, whilst that is the case, Chelsea will win nothing serious because they're not a serious football club.
Do you know what? It's probably not a debating point for this podcast, but it's relevant. The women's team are in danger of not even making the Champions League next season. Now, the reason I'm bringing that up is because, as you know, Sam, over the last year or so, Paul Winstanley, Lauren Stewart, the two sporting directors of Blue Cove employed to run the men's team, have taken a more hands-on role when it comes to the women's side. Now, they've lost the best manager they've ever had in Emma Hayes in that process, and now they're floundering in the WSL as well. Now, what's the common denominator here? I suggest the two guys who are making the big decisions, not just when it comes to the women's team, but the men's team as well, are not fit for purpose. I suggest that Liam Rosenior has been promoted above his station because they want a yes man. I've been consistent in that. That's nothing against Liam Rosenior. I think all that has come together now to create quite a vicious circle. They've conceded 12 goals in their last 4 games, Chelsea. They've lost them all. And I think there's every chance not only they miss out on the Champions League, they might not even get Europa, because there's teams like Brentford who are breathing down their neck, Everton as well. And don't underestimate the job that David Moyes has done this season. They might find themselves in the Conference League again, Chelsea.
Well, interestingly, you mentioned the women's team. Paul Green, who was Emma Hayes' sort of team manager, he was sort of the one that she lent on over the course of her 10 years at the football club, was surprisingly removed. He was surprised about it earlier in the season. And, he'd been such a big part of the fabric of the Chelsea women's team. And you're right to point out the fact that they might not make the Champions League. That is a serious failing. Last year, they were completely invincible under Sonia von Pastor. But the more and more that Winstanley and Stewart have got involved in it, the less and less Chelsea seem to achieve. And look, I am not a fan of the model. I'm even less of a fan of the model because I don't understand why there is such a reluctance just to have 3 players that are experienced, 3 absolute winners in that team. You need a proper goalkeeper with proper experience. They should have got Donnarumma. They need a proper defender who can stand there and organise the defence and be the leader of men in that back line. They need a decent centre-forward who's going to score you 20 goals. Now, João Pedro's done brilliantly, and he shouldn't be criticised because he's done fantastic. But actually, I think he has admitted over the course of the season that he likes to be sort of off the number 9 sometimes and play as the 10. Now, obviously, they've got Palmer to do that as well, and that's a heady mix. But you also need someone maybe who can come on and finish off games. Maybe it is a veteran like a Danny Welbeck, who at 35 is still banging the goals and has scored more goals than any English player in the Premier League this season. Why is experience a dirty word? You don't have to have resale value on all 30 members of your first team squad. You can have 27 great players of potential that you can make money on and 3 that help you win. Why is that a problem? I don't understand. The model is flawed. The football club isn't serious, and the football team is not going to win major prizes while you approach it like this. That's a fact. Get used to it. That hurts me. It hurts a lot of Chelsea fans. But you, as the owners, have got to realise that. And if you don't care about it, that's fine. But then you're going to get heat from the supporters because the supporters really do care about it. Liam Rosenior says they're not as bad as the noise. Go on. All right, go on.
I agree wholeheartedly with the experience shout, because it's so obvious when you look at that squad. Such talented younger players that need a bit of guidance within the game, within certain games, big games as well. But I do think we're overlooking how much football this team has played. They are done. They're out on their feet. I've watched enough games recently to see when players aren't getting back, when players are making mistakes that you wouldn't tend to see as often. Even the likes of Caicedo, I don't think got the same energy that he had at the start. They have played so much football. Semi-final of the Carabao Cup. They're still in the FA Cup, the Champions League, the Premier League, the Club World. They're done. They're gassed.
And I totally agree with that as well, which is another reason why I think they needed more in the squad in the summer. They needed to bolster the squad more, and they needed to utilise the squad a little bit better over the course of the season. We've talked about this with English clubs anyway, you know, the way that in the league phase of the Champions League, you probably need to rotate a little bit more. But the focus is definitely gone. There's no doubt about that. You can see that with the way they're operating. Liam Rosenior actually said after the game that the noise is louder than the situation that we're actually in. We're not as bad as people are making out. Tell me why he's right, Crook.
Well, I don't think he is. I've just painted the picture in terms of the league table. I don't have any confidence that Chelsea are going to get in the Champions League, particularly with Villa picking up that win at the weekend. And they set the precedent, didn't they? Because Mauricio Pochettino was fired for missing out on Champions League football. If they don't get there and they don't win a trophy this season, obviously the FA Cup is their last opportunity to do that, then they're going to have a big decision to make. And the question would be, well, who'd you bring in? I'm sure they've got Gary O'Neill's phone number. I mean, I jest, but no manager worth their salt is going to take this job for all the reasons you've underlined. Maresca fell out with it. Pochettino is most amiable, affable character, brilliant at managing up. He didn't want to be there by the end. It's a poison chalice, Chelsea, under this model.
Even Liam, actually, in his post-match interview, he said, this is where we are as a club right now. Crook sent me a text message. He said to me, enjoy the Conference League. That's about your level. And I actually texted him back, went, yeah, probably is. You know, and he was sitting there taking the mick out because Man United is going, oh, yeah, Carrick's got a cigar out and all this kind of stuff. But the fact of the matter is that you didn't play European football this year, by the way, just to let you know, because you didn't even qualify for that. But, you know, we'll skate over that because you're having a good time now. Well, we went to the last 16 of the Champions League. That's not the worst thing in the world, mate. If you were in the last 16 of the Champions League, you'd be pretty happy. To be fair, you'd be happy just to be in the Champions League. But I think, I actually, mate, you're right. We probably are right now. They're a Europa League team. That's what they look like because they're not serious. They're not serious about it. They're not serious about winning. If the byproduct is winning, great. But the main thing is making money. I think it's ridiculous personally. But anyway. Oh, dear. Anyway, Brighton 2, Liverpool 1. Liverpool fans are annoyed as well. Brighton fans, great. God, out of Brighton, because I think Fabian Hertzler has had a little bit of stick this year. But Liverpool are obviously the biggest story because they backed up a decent win against Galatasaray with actually not a great performance at all, Dean, against Brighton.
I've just not seen a Liverpool side for so long that's lacked the intensity that this Liverpool team does. And I'm talking in and out of possession. I think they can be ponderous with the possession that they have and rely too much on Van Dijk and Konate to play in and get it back and play between themselves and no pace out wide at the moment. But then even out of possession, I don't see that intensity that I've always associated, certainly with Liverpool over the last decade or so, and that's been the most shocking thing. And Brighton took advantage of that. Brighton, I thought, were excellent. They can put in those type of performances, and you look at the sort of age profile of that team. That shouldn't be a team that is overrun by of a team like Liverpool. So, I mean, look, unlucky to lose Ekitike, but the intensity thing is a big issue, I think.
Yeah. Liverpool have lost 10 Premier League games in a season for the first time in 10 years. Arne Slot came out afterwards and actually said they were better than us. They deserved it. We didn't. What the reaction from Liverpool fans often is quite negative towards Slot. I mean, especially the last 3 or 4 months. I mean, they've really amped up the pressure on him. What is the sort of whispers you've got coming out? I mean, it did take you 49 minutes to sack a manager on this podcast this week, which was quite a surprise. Oh, no, you did 2 during the first 6 minutes, but that doesn't really count. But what is the vibe coming out of Liverpool about Slot?
Well, I think that the mood all season has been they want to stand by him. You know, they feel there's been a lot that's happened on and off the pitch this season that has made it a very difficult job. But I think there isn't certainly amongst Liverpool fans, there's an agreement with Dean that they're playing too slow. There's not enough intensity about their game. And again, like Chelsea, if they don't make the Champions League, and they could still win the FA Cup, they've obviously got a difficult quarter-final against Manchester City in that competition. I think the board are going to have a decision to make. And obviously, unlike Chelsea, there is a natural successor in Xabi Alonso. So I just look at Arne Slot's demeanour now and some of the stuff he says after matches. He is starting to make excuses. He pointed to Alexander Isak's injury and losing Mo Salah to injury, and Ekitike obviously going off early in that game. And he's right. But he looks like he's trying to find reasons for their downfall rather than actually trying to find solutions. And I'm not sure that's a great look for a manager under pressure.
Okay, right, we'll be back on Wednesday to preview the England games and the World Cup qualifying playoffs. We'll have a little look at those as well. It's a massive week for England because they've got a huge 35-man squad, a couple of surprise call-ups as well to replace a couple of the injured players as well. We delve into that on Wednesday or Tuesday night, Wednesday morning. The podcast will be out pretty soon, I think. And we'll be back ahead of the FA Cup quarterfinals after that. And I think we'll probably do a preview for the Japan game as well, maybe Sunday afternoon. So keep on the Premier League All Access feed and you'll get everything that you need. What is a huge week of international football upcoming. And if you're like me, maybe Liverpool fans, West Ham fans, Tottenham fans, maybe they're in a worse boat than we are, then it's good just to be away from it all for a couple of weeks. Just focus on England and the World Cup for a little while. Just forget about club football for a little while because it's been quite tough over the last week or so. And also, it's so annoying that Manchester United are doing so well because he doesn't stop going on about it. It's irritating. Dino, thank you very much for decorating. Crook, thanks very much for staying away in Portugal. I'll see you later in the week. That's it from Premier League All Access. Make sure you tell all your friends about us. Check us out on YouTube if you haven't already. And we'll be back later in the week to preview the England games.